The opinions and suggestions expressed on the following program are solely those of the participants and are not necessarily endorsed by KRMG, Cox Media Group Incorporated, or the program sponsors. This following program is sponsored by Causeway, LLC. Information in this broadcast is not intended as an investment, tax, or financial advice. Matthew Moore is not a licensed investment advisor and speaks solely from his experience and opinions. All information in this broadcast is for entertainment or educational purposes only. Matthew Moore, Causeway, LLC, and Cox Media Group Tulsa are not responsible for the success or failure of any person's investment decisions or purchases. Matthew Moore, Causeway, LLC, and Cox Media Group Tulsa makes no and expressly disclaims all representations, warranties, and guarantees with respect to this broadcast and its sponsors. Investing in any market is inherently risky and can be financially dangerous. Invest at your own risk. Gather knowledge in the world of cryptocurrency right now on 102.3 KRMG, Tulsa's news and talk. Welcome to Cryptocurrency with Matthew J. Moore. Matthew is locally based right here in Tulsa. Questions, comments, concerns? Call 918-460-5764 or send us an open mic using the KRMG app. Now, here's Cryptocurrency with Matthew J. Moore.
And welcome to the big show. My name is Russell Mills. We are live and local in the big city on a Sunday afternoon. Going to be a much cooler week, at least off to a start tomorrow, and then things are going to heat up. And you know what? That's kind of like, well, it's like the cryptocurrency industry. You see things get hot, and then they cool down, and then they get hot. But one thing that's consistent, the people that love it, love it. And Matt J. Moore, you are definitely one of them folks.
That's right, Russell. I am always hot for cryptocurrency. You know what? It is something that has just changed my life, and I think it'll change anybody's life if they learn and do the homework and the due diligence by getting into the space, knowing what they're buying and knowing what they're investing. But I also do a really good job of getting people into the space. Eric Cooper, our co-host, being one of them. He is actually, I think, coming remotely this time for this show. Eric, are you with us?
Yeah. Hopefully you guys can hear me. I'm in South Padre, not about 12, 15 miles away from the Mexican border. And so watching the ocean roll in on a nice day here. So I say happy Father's Day to everybody. I appreciate all the dads in my life. I feel like the Lord put a lot of men in my life to help get me on a decent path. So I got to say, I got to give a shout out to all of them.
That's right. Yeah. Happy Father's Day to all the dads out there, and happy Father's Day to Jim Moore, my father. So I'd love to give a shout out to the people who matter the most, and take the time, slow down. Yes, money, investments are all important, but what's more important is family. So if you haven't wished your dad a happy Father's Day, think about it. Do it. Call him. And if you can't get a hold of him, leave him a message and tell him how much you care. But you know what? Father's Day is important, but so is what's going on in the marketplace. Some of the developments. I was thinking about this earlier, Eric. Is the market and the volatility, are you still cool with it? I know I got you into the space, but you're still holding on tight, right?
I would lie to you if I said I haven't bought a ton of Bitcoin over the past maybe month and a half. So, I mean, like I said, it's very widely known that my first purchase was in Mexico. I dropped about $1,000 just this week because it's I guess it's hard to understand why people look at the volatility of this market, whether it's legitimate, illegitimate, whatever. And you know what? We've talked about it before. Warren Buffett thinks about something and somehow somebody catches wind of it, and all of a sudden the market changes. So the normal market, that is. And so, yeah, I mean, I continue to buy. I continue to look. But you know what? You stare at that cake and it don't bake. So you just got to sit there and hold on for dear life, right?
That's right. Hodl. In fact, we are going to, today on this show, I have brought on a friend who I have spoken with before. In fact, I've had him on other programs in the past for other reasons. But Jerry Robinson is going to be our guest today, and we'll bring him on in the coming segments. But he is an economist, a trading coach, and a fellow Bitcoin fanatic as well. So I'm excited to hear his perspective on some news items, the market itself, and even the recent news, with these nation states adopting Bitcoin as a reserve currency, along with as a reserve asset. So he's going to address some of the policies, the recent actions of the Federal Reserve, essentially kind of how they've backed themselves in a corner and what it actually might mean for Bitcoin, because there's a lot of things at play here, politically, technologically, and you have to look at all sides of this when you're getting into the cryptocurrency market. It's my opinion that the Federal Reserve cannot raise interest rates again, and their only real option is more printing and possibly negative interest rates. I don't know if they'll go that far, but we'll see if Jerry agrees when he comes on the show. We're also going to get his thoughts, again, like I said, El Salvador making Bitcoin legal tender, because that's a domino effect. The effects that it's going to have on the global economy, the things that we've heard from the World Bank and the IMF, those things are all going to have implications.
Yeah, and Matt, speaking of recent news, obviously, the National Republic Congressional Committee now accepting cryptocurrency donations. They're using BitPay, which is a way that people can donate, because if people are willing to do that, they're going to accept it. Now, we've been pretty bullish about this. Is we don't think it's time to spend your crypto. We think it's time to hold on tight. But that makes it the first national committee to do this kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's obviously a big move in the political space for cryptocurrency. You have a big national party that's accepting donations in cryptocurrency. So, yeah, they're definitely jumping on the bandwagon. There's been a lot of news, a lot of hearings and talks currently in D.C. about cryptocurrency. Yep. So I'm really not surprised. There's going to be a lot of surprises in the coming weeks and months when it comes to our monetary system. I think we're at a very pivotal point in time. So it's something to pay attention to. And if you're listening to this and you are fascinated about cryptocurrency, keep looking into the traditional financial system and market, because it's going to have a lot of ripple effects. What happens there is going to affect the cryptocurrency market.
I fully agree.
For the most part, cryptocurrency has been a non-correlated asset for most of its history. When you look at it compared to the other, the traditional financial market, but there will be some overflow and some direct effects that take place. And if you want to learn more about that and why our system is broken, you can go to my website at mattjmoore.com. You can purchase my Amazon best-selling book, Foundations for Liberty. In the second half of that book, I talk about how our money is created and where it gets its value, because that's essentially the first pill that you have to take to go down the rabbit hole of Bitcoin. You have to understand money. We've talked about that before on our past shows, but if somebody needs some hand-holding and you want to get into the cryptocurrency space, you can reach out to me and we can set up a consultation. I'd be more than happy to walk people through this, because my whole goal is I want to make it safe. I want people to understand what they're investing in. I don't want to see people get hurt and scammed, because there's a lot of scams out there. There's a lot of dangerous things that you got to consider. So having a tour guide is not a bad idea.
Yeah. And Matt, what we do on this show, I believe it's a true service to our community. We are going to answer questions. If you want to reach out to Matt, if you want to give us a call, you can do the open mic. Let us know, because we want to answer questions, and we're not demanding that you spend $10,000 to have a conversation with us, because you can start yourself with $20. And so, speaking of protection, Matt, a little bit of news with some new ledger hardware scam going on. Most people would say, Eric, Matt, you probably shouldn't bring up scams and issues like this when we're talking about cryptocurrency, but we want to be transparent. So, Matt, tell me a little bit about what your thoughts on that.
Yeah, just with anything, whether you're shopping at your local Target or Walmart, or whether you're getting into cryptocurrency, or you're just browsing the internet or checking your email, there are always malicious people out there trying to what's that? I think we lost him there. He kind of cut out, but
been to Miami, and now I'm in Padre. I haven't been to China recently.
Well, we'll have to talk a little bit more about that. You cut out there for a minute. I didn't hear what you were saying, but the whole idea of being scammed, it's not new, and it's not new to the cryptocurrency space. And so when you look at being safe, one of the best ways to do it is to put your cryptocurrency on a hardware wallet that protects the private key and gives you a seed phrase that gives you full control to be able to back up that wallet if you ever lost it. And it always keeps that private key, that sensitive information, off the internet. I always promote them, and I promote Ledger as one of them. But recently, Ledger had essentially a data breach in their business. This was back in 2020. And it's not something to be afraid of, because the device are safe. The security on the device is safe. Your funds are safe if you have them. It's no different than if somebody had, got into Target or Walmart's system. What they collected was customer data like telephone number, email, address. So, it's my opinion that it's always smart to buy your device directly from the manufacturer. Because yes, even though your contact information was stolen, you want to make sure that that device is never tampered with. And if you buy it directly from the manufacturer, you have a better guarantee that that's going to happen. But in case you're curious, the makers of the Ledger Wallet do not have access to your private keys. They do not have record of them. So there's no way that anybody could ever steal them from the manufacturer. But with that said, this data breach, you've got these criminals that they basically have your contact information. So they're going to try to trick you. They're going to send you emails to try to, phish you, try to get you to submit private information, maybe your seed phrase saying, hey, your device has been compromised. Respond to this email, give us your seed phrase, and we'll give you a new one. Stuff like that people would fall for. Well, what they've been doing now is they've actually been sending fake devices to people's mailboxes and saying, hey, your device has been compromised. Use this new device, plug it into your computer, enter in your seed phrase, and move your funds over to this new wallet. So they're essentially trying to do the same thing, but with an actual physical device. So they're getting more and more brazen. So if you are a Ledger Wallet holder and you use one, be careful and do not use any device that is in your mailbox that was unexpected, because they are literally trying to steal your funds. Do not open it, do not use it, and do not ever use your seed phrase or put it into it. So
one of the main reasons why you should tune in our show every week is to learn these things. You've got to be smart. You've got to be vigilant. Cryptocurrency is a personal monetary sovereignty. You are becoming your own bank, and that's high levels of personal responsibility. And when we come back from our to our next segment, we're going to have Jerry Robinson from Follow the Money join us. He's an economist, trading coach, and fellow Bitcoin fanatic. And so, with all these countries talking about making Bitcoin legal, I'm interested to hear what he says.
I am too.
Me too, and hopefully so are you, listening at home. So stick around. We'll take a quick time out. Make sure that we've got Jerry locked and loaded and ready to go. And we'll be back with more of Cryptocurrency with Matthew J. Moore. You're listening to 102.3 KRMG, Tulsa's News and Talk. That wasn't me. Is there a strange person in the room coughing somewhere? That was weird. Hey, welcome back to Cryptocurrency with Matthew J. Moore, where something random is bound to happen at least once a week. My name is Russell Mills. Appreciate you tuning in, hanging out with us on a Sunday afternoon. It's hot out there, but you know what? It's going to get a lot cooler tomorrow, but a lot wetter. Have your umbrella in the morning. Meanwhile, we're digging for digital gold with I call him the crypto guru himself, Matthew J. Moore. Welcome back, sir.
Thank you, Russell. Always a wonderful time being in the house on a Sunday. Happy Father's Day to all the dads out there. We wished everybody a happy Father's Day earlier, but it's good to do it again because dads matter. We do this show for very specific purposes and very specific reasons, and one of them is to keep people safe. And that's why this last segment we were talking about a recent scam going around with hardware wallets. And if you own a Ledger hardware wallet, your Ledger is safe. It's fine. Nothing is compromised. But we were just warning people, there's a chance that your contact information, when you purchased one on the online store from the manufacturer, may have been compromised. And so people are trying to phish you, trying to trick you, trying to get you to give your private keys away. Do not do that, and do not use any hardware wallet that was sent to you unexpectedly. So we just like to bring those up and remind people. But today we have our co-host, Eric Cooper. He is actually coming to us remotely from the ocean. I saw a picture on Facebook right before we went live. I was a little bit jealous.
Me too.
Eric, are you there, buddy?
Terrific. You guys can hear me still good?
Yep, we're good.
All right. Well, once again, one of the big things that we talk about is security, and we talked about the ability for people to hack, the cryptocurrency space. Go back to our old shows. You can Google cryptocurrency with Matthew J. Moore. You can look for the on-demand areas. Go back and check that out, because that's where you can learn a lot. And once again, this is a complete thing about education. We are trying to educate people and keep them safe.
That's right. That's right. And today, I think, Eric, you want to introduce our guest today? We got a special guest on the line.
Yeah, definitely. So, and we've got Jerry Robinson from followthemoney.com. Once again, he's an economist, a trading coach, a fellow Bitcoin fanatic. Jerry, are you here with us?
I am. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you great. Welcome to the show. Do you mind explaining to the audience what you do and kind of how you got into the cryptocurrency space?
Well, sure. And let me just begin by saying I really appreciate what you guys are doing. Education is so important in this space, and so many people still don't know what cryptocurrency is. They don't know what Bitcoin is. They need an education. They need people like you to explain it. So I'm really glad to hear what I'm hearing so far. But thank you for having me on. I have been in the cryptocurrency space. I was fortunate enough to be introduced to Bitcoin back in 2011 by a friend of mine by the name of Trace Mayer. Trace was one of the very early adopters. He was actually buying Bitcoin at 25 cents back in 2010. And he turned me on to Bitcoin. He explained it to me, and it took me quite a bit of time to understand what he was saying. I ended up, buying into Bitcoin, and I have been dollar cost averaging in ever since. When I first bought Bitcoin way back 8 or 9 years ago, it was very difficult to buy, and it's become so much easier now. But Bitcoin to me made sense. I wrote a book called Bankruptcy of Our Nation that was released back in the 2008 crisis. And I was, at that very same time that I was writing that book, I was talking in that book about fiat currency, about the debauchery of the currency, about previous historical episodes of hyperinflation. And I was empowering people in that book to take action. And at that very same time, there was some unknown person named Satoshi Nakamoto writing a white paper. So I'm writing this book, Bankruptcy of Our Nation, and Satoshi Nakamoto was writing this white paper introducing this innovative form of value exchange. And it's so ironic that when you read the white paper, the Bitcoin white paper, it's very clear that Bitcoin was created for such times like these, where we have an out-of-control Federal Reserve, we have an out-of-control, fiscal policy, reckless monetary policy. Bitcoin is a solution to this, and it's been heartening to see many people in the, we would say, gold bugs, people who understand fiat money and the destructive power of it, adopting Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, but some are still on the fence. And I would imagine there's many in your audience who, are still kind of kicking the tires of cryptocurrency. And I want to let them know that even though I got in the space 9 years ago, I still view this as early innings. I think that the investment potential for people, if they diversify, if they're careful, if they're prudent, this can be a wonderful addition to their overall portfolio, to their overall investment portfolio. So I'm a fan of the space, and I educate people through our website, followthemoney.com.
That's awesome. And Jerry, as a economist and as somebody who's been in the space for a long time, right now we see the dominance of decentralized cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin taking hold in the marketplace. It has first mover advantage, and essentially it has network effect. But we will see, and we are seeing, nation states and central banks talking about doing their own, their digital currencies in their own way. Obviously not decentralized and probably going to act much like the fiat money system that we see now. But it looks like we've got nation states like Latin America who are starting to adopt Bitcoin as a reserve asset and making it legal tender.
Yeah, it looks like Tonga, Paraguay, Argentina, Panama, Brazil, Nicaragua. They're going to follow El Salvador. It's game time, and the dominoes are falling. We keep saying it.
Yeah, and it's like I see other states following suit simply off this idea of game theory. It's like nobody wants to be first, but nobody wants to be last. And first it's gradually, and then all of a sudden it comes sweeping in like a giant wave. And, like Jerry was saying, I still believe that we are early in this adoption curve. But what I see evolving is like this. Bitcoin essentially becomes the world's ultimate hard asset and digital monetary network, in which all value is essentially measured against. This being made possible essentially by the fact that Bitcoin's monetary policy, okay, we all know this, is open and known, and no one person or party is in control. It offers the best security and has utility, real digital scarcity, and it ultimately becomes this layer one type money in the digital economy. Jerry, I want to hear your thoughts on this. Obviously, I see a world where, we have multiple layers being built on Bitcoin. But do you see a similar world evolving? And, we may have to continue this conversation in the next segment, but I really want to get your take on this.
Yeah, sure. Let's just take El Salvador. You mentioned them. Let's just talk about El Salvador for a minute, because this is a major event that has happened. So we have a country in Central America, the president there, Nayib Bukele, officially adopting Bitcoin as legal tender. And we see this as a major, major coup for monetary sovereignty. El Salvador adopted the United States dollar back in 2001. And since 2001, the U.S. dollar has been slowly losing value. In fact, just over the last 12 months, the dollar has lost about 4 or 5% of its value. And when you tack onto that the rise of prices in El Salvador, El Salvadorans are losing value of their currency, and the prices are going up. So this is a big deal for people living in Central America. But not only that, there's three things that I see about El Salvador that I think are major. Number one, Bitcoin's official adoption is going to radically transform that nation's financial landscape. And you can extrapolate this to other nations, but this is what other nations are looking at.
Well,
nearly 70%.
Yep.
So nearly 70. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying we got to take the break here. But when we come back, I want to hear these thoughts, Jerry. I want you to explain yourself to our audience, because I think this is good.
All right. You are listening to Cryptocurrency with Matthew J. Moore. We do need to take a quick time out, get you caught up on what's going on news and weather-wise, and then we will be back. Stay tuned. You're listening to 102.3 KRMG, Tulsa's News and Talk. Welcome back to Cryptocurrency with Matthew J. Moore. We are live and local in the big city of Tulsa on your Sunday evening. My name is Russell Mills. Thank you very much for tuning in. Maybe you came here out of vague curiosity. Maybe you landed here by accident. I don't know. But you came to the right place if you're interested in uncovering some of the mysteries and trying to get your mind wrapped around what is cryptocurrency, what is blockchain technology. Well, we've got a guy who can explain it in English. His name is Matthew J. Moore. Matt, welcome back.
Hey, everybody. Happy Father's Day on this beautiful Sunday. Hopefully you've had some good time by the pool and spending some time with the family. So today we are talking about some latest news in the cryptocurrency space, talking about nation states adopting Bitcoin. But I've got my co-host, Eric Cooper. He's with us. He's on the line remotely. Eric, why don't you say hello?
Once again, happy Father's Day to everybody. And I said it during Mother's Day. If you're looking for a present for Dad, you still haven't got it, let's get him some Bitcoin. You know what? Because it is a little bit of a flashback time for us right now. You can get it, and then next year, I would venture to say that your worst case scenario is it's going to be worth more than it is today. And it's better than socks and ties.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and today we've got a special guest with us. He is an economist. He is a trading coach. He is a Bitcoin fanatic, and he is his name is Jerry Robinson, and he's with followthemoney.com. And we were talking to Jerry the last segment about Bitcoin, about El Salvador accepting Bitcoin as a legal tender, and we're talking about nation states putting it on their balance sheet as a reserve asset. How this is a domino effect that's going to affect the traditional markets. It's going to affect the traditional economy, the implications that it has for nation states. And before we took break, Jerry was explaining to us his thoughts on the matter. And Jerry, I want to bring you back, and I want you to kind of rewind just a little bit and explain to those who may not have been listening your thoughts and why this is so big for nation states like El Salvador to do what they're doing.
Well, it's a huge coup for monetary sovereignty. For so long, we have been dependent upon the U.S. dollar, not just us, but much of the globe. El Salvador, as I had stated, nearly 70% of the people who live in El Salvador do not have a bank account. They don't have a credit card. 1/5 of the nation's GDP is composed of remittances, which is money sent back home by migrants, and they have to pay third parties in order to be able to send that money. And so Bitcoin adoption in El Salvador is going to, solve a major expense through remittances, and it's going to give choice to many people. It's going to attract entrepreneurs to that country. There's already innovators and companies who are planning on moving to El Salvador because of this new law. So it's going to boost the country's long-term economic outlook. This has other nations looking at it saying this might be a good idea for us. So, too, El Salvador's dependence upon the dollar, which they adopted back in 2001, that's going to be diminished. El Salvador is very likely just the first domino to fall in this, and many other unbanked nations that use the dollar as their official currency are seeking ways to boost their own economies in the wake of this global pandemic. And so that steady erosion of the dollar's value due to the reckless fiscal and monetary policies of Washington means that more governments will be seeking currency alternatives like Bitcoin. And then on top of that, anyone who is invested in Bitcoin should understand that it is in finite supply. That is, only 21 million Bitcoin will ever exist, and 3 to 4 million of those are already lost. So you're really talking about a max supply now of about 17.5 million that will ever exist. And so what we see here with El Salvador is 10 million new potential users coming online because of this legislation. And due to Bitcoin's controlled maximum supply, when you combine that with rising demand, then you're ultimately going to have rising prices. And so as more countries, adopt this, we're even seeing countries, as we have mentioned, the Bahamas, Paraguay, Panama has a bill coming up in July that looks very similar to this. You're going to have more demand for this finite currency. And as you do, you're simply going to create rising prices. And many people just don't understand the difference between sound money and unsound money. And the simplest way to describe it is to say that sound money is in finite supply and unsound money is infinite supply, meaning you can print it as much as you want.
Right. And it's like, Jerry, we both know that fiat money systems like the dollar, they have a shelf life, and they all fail at some point. Never in history have they ever worked. And you have to continually borrow and go deeper into debt and inflate the money supply in order for it to continue to work. But essentially what you're doing is you're robbing people of their time, labor, and energy when you do that. So it's an unjust system in which people's personal liberties are being taken advantage of. And I actually see this as a stake in the ground when countries like El Salvador are saying, World Bank, Federal Reserve, IMF, screw you guys. We're gonna do this because, yes, they did ask the World Bank for their help for implementing this. But, it was funny, the World Bank, they put out this statement. They go, while the government did approach us for assistance on Bitcoin, this is not something the World Bank can support given the environmental and transparency shortcomings, which, in my opinion, that statement is a flat out lie about Bitcoin's transparency and environmental concerns. Bitcoin will and has eroded the influence of organizations like the IMF and World Bank. And these international organizations that are saying this are concerned about developing countries and the increasing wealth gap. But in reality, when they say that stuff, that they're concerned about that, they want to fix the problem, their policies are the ones causing it. Essentially, all they're offering is, hey, we'll load you up with some more debt, money that we'll create out of thin air, or fiat money that's created out of thin air. So El Salvador asking the IMF and World Bank for help, which I think this was just a little bit of irony, I think it was kind of a poke in the eye, is like asking your drug dealer to check you into rehab and for the slave to ask his master to free him. Jerry, what are your thoughts on the current policies of the fiat money system like the Federal Reserve? How much longer of a shelf life do you think they really have?
It's difficult to say. It really is. I mean, we've been watching this Fed now for so long. And in 2008, we saw the balance sheet of the Federal Reserve go from, just under $1 trillion all the way up to $4.5 trillion. And it stayed there for many, many, many years. And it wasn't even until about 2018, 2019 where the Fed tried to start clawing back and removing some of that liquidity on its balance sheet. And then in the middle of the last year or two, they've had to double the balance sheet again. So the Fed is sitting with an $8 trillion balance sheet right now. They have interest rates near zero. And yet what is the story that we have been hearing, for the last 4, 5, 6, 7 years? Nothing but how great the economy is, right? We always hear about how great the economy is. And in fact, we're even hearing that now. It's so robust. Everything's so great. Well, the truth of the matter is when the Federal Reserve, when your central bank is buying corporate bond ETFs, that's how can you not have a decent economy? Whenever the central players are actually stepping in and giving you 0% interest rates and artificially suppressing, economic reality for investors, of course you're going to have some semblance of rising asset prices. But the problem is that how is the Fed going to be able to unwind this $8 trillion balance sheet? And this is the question that countries like El Salvador have. I mean, this is why they want a standard that can't be debauched. And I don't think you can blame them. I mean, when you really think about it, digital currency, digital money, if you will, is the future. It's the future of money. And Bitcoin is a public ledger that's fully auditable. When was the last time the Federal Reserve was audited? We need a sound monetary system, and the Federal Reserve is not cutting it. The reckless fiscal policies that we're getting out of Washington are not cutting it. And most people today are just woefully unprepared for another crisis. And the Fed can continue to try to bail it out, but who knows how many times they can succeed at it. You have to give them credit, though, Matt. You have to give them credit, Matt. They have suspended economic reality for the investor class.
Yeah, they have.
So, Jerry, this is Russell, and I got a question along these lines, because is El Salvador, is the populace of El Salvador ready for an internet-based cryptocurrency? Do they have the infrastructure? Do they have internet access? Are they, educated and ready to adopt this? I'm just curious what you think about that.
Well, what's really interesting is that they have actually done some pretty big innovations already. So, for example, for the average business owner down in El Salvador who may be on the fence about Bitcoin, may not be real excited that he has to accept Bitcoin for, the purchase of some item in his store, what El Salvador has done is they've created an instant way for the vendor to automatically convert that back into U.S. dollars. And so for those who are a little hesitant about this, they're already developing technologies to allow an instant transfer back into the dollar. So as far as internet, down there, it's actually pretty good. And along with the Lightning Network that's being rolled out, it's going to make, I think, this probably go off without a hitch. Now, realize not everyone is going to be using it automatically. It's going to take some time for it to ramp up. What this really is a shot across the bow, as I was stating. Think about Saddam Hussein back in September of 2000. He emerges from a meeting with his oil advisors and says, hey, you know what we're going to do? We're going to get off of the U.S. dollar and move to the euro for our oil. A few years later, he was hanging from a noose, blamed for 9/11. The same thing with Venezuela. Venezuela has tried to get away from the dollar. And you were mentioning the IMF and the World Bank, pressuring them. They've been pressuring them. Iran wants to get away from the U.S. dollar. They're part of the axis of evil. Russia and China are trying to get away from the dollar system, and they're considered evil. And so here's El Salvador. It would not surprise me in the least if the United States media comes up with some sort of scandal around this current president in El Salvador, or even aircraft carriers start floating down there next to El Salvador in the sea to pressure them, because this is the first domino that could fall, and it already has fallen. So who knows where this is going to go, but this is devastating for the dollar standard.
Right. And, but here's the thing, though, Jerry. People don't realize this, but every 80 to 90 years, the natural world reserve currency is changed. So it's going to be inevitable. And people always ask, like, what's the dollar backed by? And I'm like, military guns. I'm like, how long is it going to take? Will El Salvador be, a victim of a coup, or will they be bombed? Like, I don't know. But, like, we tend to use force when we probably shouldn't. It's so funny. The bill that they passed said central banks are increasingly taking action that may cause harm to the economic stability of El Salvador, that in order to mitigate the negative impact from central banks, it becomes necessary to authorize the circulation of a digital currency with a supply that cannot be controlled by any central bank and is only altered in accord with the objective and calculable criteria. So, interesting times, but when we come back, we're going to talk more about this, and we're going to talk more with Jerry.
All right, you're listening to Cryptocurrency with Matthew J. Moore, and they're not afraid to talk about the big ideas and the big issues that are going on. The main thing is we're uncovering the mysteries of cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin, making it explicable, even to folks like me, and I am not a math guy. My name's Russell. We'll have more of Cryptocurrency with Matthew J. Moore right after a quick timeout. You're listening to 102.3 KRMG, Tulsa's News and Talk. Welcome back to Cryptocurrency with Matthew J. Moore. My name is Russell Mills. Do appreciate you tuning in on your Sunday. We are live and local in the big city. And we've been talking about El Salvador. This is a country that has actually said, we're going to make Bitcoin a legal tender in El Salvador. And it's got some folks excited. I think, Matt, you're a little enthusiastic about that, because the idea here is like they may be the first, but they likely won't be the last, right? Yeah, no, I get super enthusiastic about this stuff. Like I was telling Russell off air, I'm pretty altruistic. I'm pretty motivated when it comes to, injustices being done on people. And when you consider money being your representation of your time, labor, and energy, I get fired up because I want to see things right. I want to see it done right. And there was a reason why the founding fathers made gold and silver our money, and we left that a long time ago. And it's like now we just use unit of debts. This unit of debt that's pulled out of thin air, and these people who have the monopoly to create it out of thin air, these shareholders of the central bank that make 6% annually off that, and that's wrong. I mean, that's counterfeiting. Like if I counterfeit money, I go to prison. And inflation is legal counterfeiting of new money that didn't exist before. But we got our co-host here. Let me get off my soapbox. Co-host Eric Cooper. He's with us. Eric, why don't you say hello?
I got to say hello, guys. Coming at you from South Padre Island on vacation with the family. And so I always am super encouraged because, obviously we were down in Miami a few weeks ago, Matt, and we're talking to folks who had this news in their pocket. They knew this was about to happen. And again, it is a system that we have no say over. We have nothing to do. I mean, the central banks, they can drop another $1 trillion on us right now. And so we're bringing in Jerry Robinson from followthemoney.com. We are.
Well, I think he cut out there. He's coming to us remotely.
To check it out, to look at it. So I know I'm probably cutting out here. So Matt, I'm going to turn it back over here to Jerry. And Jerry, why don't you introduce yourself here?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Jerry Robinson here, followthemoney.com. I've been a crypto investor for about 9 years, and be happy to leave the audience with a few parting tips, Matt, whenever you'd like. Yeah,
go ahead and share your thoughts.
I think for those listening out there, we can start talking about some of these ideas, and some of the people who are listening to us don't own any Bitcoin. They're hearing all of this. They don't own cryptocurrency assets. And I just want to provide some practical tips for those who are listening. First of all, the way that I approach cryptocurrencies is I limit my total investable.
I think
all of our students.
Can you say that one more time, Jerry? I think we lost you.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So I just want to leave the audience with a few tips. And one of them is that I personally, as an investor in the space for nearly a decade, I limit my total investable my total investments into the crypto space to just 5% of my total investable assets. So, it's a very small dollar cost average that I do, but I do it regularly. And so therefore, because of the volatility, it's not an extreme thing for me. You don't want to invest money that you cannot afford. You don't want to invest money you can't afford to lose. And also, if you're a long-term investor in the space, which is what I would encourage, as opposed to just trading the space, actually buying and holding, then be prepared for 80% drawdowns. I have sat through two 80% drawdowns, first in 2014 and then again in 2018. And volatility is very high in this space. And so people should not get involved in this space if they're not prepared for massive volatility. But if you can handle that volatility, what you get in return for it is monetary sovereignty. Some people want stability, but that stability comes with monetary slavery.
Yep.
So if you're willing to have a little volatility, then you can have monetary sovereignty with it. So I think the best way to approach this space is to dollar cost average in, and is to approach it as a long-term investor, and to be patient, to buy and hold, and to ignore all the fear, the uncertainty, and the doubt that surrounds it. And lastly, is to, if you don't hold your private keys, Matt, and I know you're preaching this all the time, but if you don't hold your private keys, it's not your cryptocurrency. So make sure that you're storing your cryptocurrency on a hardware wallet or some sort of cold storage, because it's so important that you don't lose, because there's a lot of bad actors in the space.
That's right. That's right. And, it's, when we talk about volatility in Bitcoin, it's mostly, yes, it has these big ups and downs, but if you zoom out and you look at the overall history, the trend has been up, higher highs and higher lows. So your time preference has to be longer. And, the thing is, when you look at the dollar, the creation of the Federal Reserve, the dollar has lost 98% of its purchasing power. You heard Jerry talk about it losing another 4 or 5% over this last year or so. And so it's like, what are we doing to protect ourselves from this wealth confiscation that's taking place blindly? Most people don't realize that it's going on. And it's like, if you were to take the melt value of the silver that people earned, the $1.25 that they earned back in the 50s and 60s, that melt value would be greater than $25. So people were making essentially $25 worth of value an hour, because we actually used real money. And so wages do not keep up with this inflation. So, Jerry, I know you feel probably about the same way. Is inflation, is sound money, is this what got you into Bitcoin?
It really is. I was looking at gold and silver, and I am still a gold and silver investor. But when I heard about Bitcoin and the finite nature of it, and how it was based upon cryptography and math, it certainly attracted me. So it protects me against, as you pointed out, Bitcoin has this track record over the last 10 years of delivering 200% annual gains, 200% annual gains over the long term. I mean, that's incredible. That's an incredible, and that even by putting a nickel out of every investment dollar into something like that, it's going to provide you an immense amount of inflation protection. You can't leave your money in a glass jar. You've got to put it somewhere. And I think putting a little bit into the cryptocurrency space is very prudent. I really do.
Well, where can people find you, Jerry?
If people want to learn all about, we have tons of cryptocurrency investing education. Followthemoney.com is where we are at. We have a podcast. We have a YouTube channel, a Twitter feed, FTM Daily. But I would love to meet some of your listeners and help them if they have questions. And I want to encourage you, Matt, and your team there, because you guys are doing such a great job of education. I'm so glad that KRMG has this show beaming out to Tulsa. There's so many great people in Tulsa who need to hear what you're teaching. But yeah, if people want to find us, we're of like mind. Followthemoney.com. Reach out to us, send us an email right there, or become a member. We have lots of great education.
That's awesome. Well, that concludes our show for today. Thank you for listening. We'll be back next week talking more about crypto.
Great show, Matt. I'd like to thank Eric Cooper, our co-host, of course, and Jerry Robinson. Nice to meet you, if only remotely, Jerry. Followthemoney.com is the website. Don't forget, you can also check Matt out at mattjmoore with 2 O's.com. And of course, we post all of these as podcasts. All these shows are posted as podcasts in the on-demand section at KRMG.com. I'm Russell Mills. See you next week.